Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership Talk Show podcast, hosted by ID3 and Professor Jeff Willey. This show is designed to provide an exclusive forum on educational achievement gaps related to learner success while discovering relationships and family issues in diverse settings.
Welcome back to the Impact of Educational Leadership. This is episode 11, hosted by ID3 and Professor Jeff Willey. Tonight we have back with us on the panel, Buddy Thornton. And we are excited about tonight's discussion. It is, does civic engagement lead to higher education? Again, does civic engagement lead to higher education? Increasingly in our society, we are witnessing an alarming and sensitive skepticism toward institutions, including colleges and universities, that have historically been guardians and those structures for people or for students who have had problems with loss of identity. College has been a place where people have gone historically to go and find themselves as the evidence and the truth, per se, that is needed for young people developing. The interpretive functions of the humanities and social sciences, as it pertains to natural sciences, seems equally misunderstood and devalued. In other words, people are having problems understanding what it means to be civically engaged. Tonight we're going to be breaking this down. Tonight we're going to be unpacking such a complex subject in a way that we can understand. So be patient as we delve into this discussion about does civic engagement lead to higher education. First, we're going to be asking some questions to Professor Jeff Willey.
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership Talk Show podcast, hosted by ID3 and Professor Jeff Willey.
A lot of times I call him the Oracle because he is so in tune to these types of discussions as it pertains to educational leadership. Professor Willey, he was born in rural East Texas from a family of 12. Classroom instructor, he holds a master's degree in conflict mediation. He's currently finishing his doctorate in educational leadership. Professor Willey is inspirational, motivational, and a visionary. He lives with purpose, and that's his passion. And he is a lifelong learner. He's also an inspiring author, professor, John Maxwell Team Executive, leadership consultant, coach, disc trainer, you name it. Professor Jeff Willey. Professor Jeff Willey, say hello to the people, sir.
Hello. Thank you, Isaiah. Thank you for the introduction. Appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, absolutely. So my first question for you, Professor Willey, is what are some ways that the impact of educational leadership can have on civic engagement?
Great question, and I like your introduction and your preface on bringing this subject to the forefront. But I want to challenge you on one word. You said this is a complex topic. And I differ with you on. I think it's a very simple topic that we have definitely made it complex because we're not bringing it to the forefront and keeping it as part of our routine discussions with our youth, with our families, and in our community. So that's what makes it complex, because we have lost a slight understanding of civic engagement and speaking about higher ed and the importance of that, I want to start this out by this. I use a quote from my brother-in-law, and my brother-in-law has shared this with me before. My brother-in-law is Dr. Kerry Allison. He pastors a church in Southern California, in Compton, matter of fact. And one of the things that helps with that, he just uses a very simple term. If you want to get a young man engaged that can't leave the neighborhood, a young woman engaged around the resources and the financial, economic resources to leave the neighborhood, if they don't, and then get them a library card. The library card, of course, exposes them to the library. But you really don't need a library card today. You need the internet. The internet exposes them to a world perspective and a world view, along with they're looking at objective information about what's happening around the globe, what's happening in local universities, what's happening in international universities. But the focus is to try to establish a world view. Once we get to understand and appreciate diversity and a world view, that we are a rainbow coalition of globally connected people, no matter where we are from, there's got to be a civic responsibility. And when students are pursuing higher education, and they got to look at it. Sometimes you want your students to pursue that international education if possible, economically if possible. But if they're not pursuing that international education, international institution, they are pursuing that local institution, whether it be a junior college or whether it be a four-year institution. And one of the advantages of that four-year institution, of course, is that global perspective. You are surrounded by growth-minded people. You're surrounded by academia that fosters your critical thinking, your exposure to different diversity, different diverse thinkers, the scholarly aspect of looking at things from a different paradigm, from a different microscope, as we say. I use the word paradigm, but I can really just narrow it down and say looking at things from a microscope, and things are expanded. When your vision is expanded, your mind is expanded. But the focus is that you want to have civic engagement. Civic engagement is a sense of responsibility for not only the local community, but also the broader community. And that's what higher ed does. If higher ed don't do that, and then you got to have a framework in the home that's fostering that civic engagement, and that's got to be modeled through your breadwinners or your mom and dad or your grandparent or whoever your guardian is in that home. It's got to be engaging and modeling that civic engagement. Those conversations around the dinner table, those conversations around the TV, those conversations in the family room about having a civic responsibility, a community responsibility, that we're all in this community together.
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership Talk Show podcast, hosted by ID3 and Professor Jeff Willie.
And promoting that, of course, when you enter that institution of higher ed, there's a big platform for that, because those organizations on those institutions of higher ed are somewhat involved in the community. And most of those organizations are formulated by bringing people together to support the local community. One of the greatest things that they do in high schools, primarily public schools, private schools, and charter schools, they take young men and women on field trips. And those field trips is an opportunity to expose them to different aspects of professions, civil responsibility, community responsibilities, touching different neighborhoods. And some people call those curriculum and action trips. Some people call them field trips, curriculum and actions. I study a social subject in the classroom, and now I go touch that and see it manifest itself in the local community, whether it be locally or whether it be into another state. And then some social organizations even take their young students abroad to experience those museums in Paris and in London and in Ireland and in France. And so they get an international perspective of civic responsibility. And they get to know that we are a global society, a rainbow coalition of many folks that's responsible for this community. And I can take that even further, Isaiah, because that environmental aspect of that comes into play as well. We have to be guardians of our environment. So that's my focus on that particular piece right now, is that the educational leadership has to lead that engagement, and it obviously starts at home. So that's my take on that right now, and I appreciate this question, because I think it is something that we need to have a more in-depth conversation about in our schools, in our homes, and in our local civic and citizens' responsibilities.
we definitely do need to have that. And when you start mentioning the environment the way that you did, the first thing I thought about was personal encouragement. That's something that you do quite often when you go out to speak to different engagements, whether it be in West Africa or throughout the United States. And I know you're going to Japan in November, and we wish you well for that endeavor. As it relates to these personal encouragements and motivations, for that matter, we have to also, like you mentioned, we have to remember that this is a continual professional growth method that we have to continue to measure to give us a better worldview, as you were speaking of, as it relates to other communities. This is what I call engagement empowerment. When you have vision, you have provision, and in that, you begin to expand the way you think. And when you expand your thinking, then you can better manage social issues. You can better manage discussions, especially as it relates to behavior discussions in our school institutions.
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership Talk Show podcast, hosted by ID3 and Professor Jeff Willie.
And so this is why we brought on my dear friend, Buddy Thornton. Buddy, please say hello to the people, sir.
Appreciate being here this evening. It is my honor to take part with you and Professor Willie.
Absolutely. Let me tell you a little bit about Buddy before we get started. Buddy Thornton is a Vietnam-era veteran. He served as a hospital corpsman in the U.S. Navy. He is a certified trainer in mediation. He also has his own business in mediation, and he's the owner. It's BCT Mediations Plus. He started this venture back in 2012, I believe, and it deals with mediation and coaching. He's a consultant. He has this consulting firm that specializes in executive coaching, systemization, that's a big word, employee peer mediation coaching, personal coaching, and family conflict resolution. He's also a keynote speaker. He is very keen in family development, and that's why he does his seminars. They cater to that thing I just mentioned. So anyway, so let me ask you a question, buddy. With the diversity in our nation, what are some of the ways that we can mediate civic engagement to help us navigate through different classes, social classes, different ethnicities, races, different genders, different ages, and the numerous other forms of personal identity? What are some ways that we can help navigate through those?
First, I want to mirror Professor Willie and say I really appreciate the introduction. One of the most important things about the diversity of our nation is that people must realize that our diversity is a strength. It creates a power that a lot of people across the globe do not get. They don't conceptualize it. They don't understand how Americans can be so divisive at times, and yet we stand together shoulder by shoulder in what Professor Willie called a rainbow coalition. But we actually stand with people around the globe in that same way, and we want them to realize that this is a struggle. This is a decades-long, centuries-long struggle to create a coalition that allows people to be not only different and unique, but to stand together for a common cause. I like to draw a picture of a table, and that table in the 1700s was a very small table, and it was an exclusive table. It only allowed certain people to get to that table. The seats of the table were very, very valuable, and over time, different groups, as the country became more diverse, as different historic events took place, some of them extremely shameful in our history, but some very powerful in our history, the seats of the table expanded. and the struggle for people to get seats at that table. As you mentioned, women's suffrage, the civil rights movement, different eras, different impacts, different peoples, but it's always been in a condition, a environment of expanding cultural diversity. The diversity we have today is far more expansive than the entirety of diversity that we showed in the 17 and 1800s. And certainly as we go forward, that diversity becomes very important. People don't understand that you have to honor your seat at that table. The struggle, especially as an example, that the Black American population fought, bled, suffered to get their seat at the table. They need to understand that once you're at that table, you need to honor the table, you need to want to be at the table, and you have to respect everybody else who's at that table. Hold your head high. Do not be allowed to be put into a pigeonhole. Don't let anyone else say, well, we've been here for hundreds of years, you're a newcomer, we're not going to listen to you. You have a right to be at that table, and every seat at that table has equity and equality that's built in. People have to honor that, and in today's society, people do not honor that. We have to have debate, not hate. We have to have unconditional positive regard concepts and context taught at every level of the school systems so that people not only have curiosity about people in their own neighborhood and in their own city, but about people who are completely different from them, without looking at them with a bias that's built in. The implicit bias context has destroyed the ability to sit at that table and give respect to the other seats at that table. So if you close your eyes and you visualize that table, you want as many diverse people at that table as possible, but you want them all to be able to stand up, speak their piece, believe they were heard, and then move forward equally. And at some point in our history, hopefully within my lifetime, we're going to see that.
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership Talk Show podcast, hosted by ID3 and Professor Jeff Willie.
Wow. You know, Dr. Thornton, that was simply beautiful. Let me recap a little bit. What Buddy was saying has a lot of love in it, and I saw three things that was at the table. And to sit at the table, there has to be love. And with that love, there's going to be respect. And if you have respect, then you value those people that are sitting at their table. Professor Jeff Willie, what you got for us, sir?
Amazing. As he was talking, as Buddy was talking, I wrote down the word love. And then you just bring it right out. Thank you. You brought it out. Great minds think alike, my brother. That's so important. The story I want to share, and Buddy brought it out so enlightening, that one day we all stand together and be reunited on that foundation of that four-letter word called love. In spite of our differences, love is a complete unifier. And one of the things that happened during the election in 2008, that my mother, who was born in 1925 and went through the Depression, and then things that she was exposed to as a young kid and growing up, to see an African American being elected as the President of the United States, she did not ever expect to see that happen. And so talking to her that night, she cried. She really just poured out her heart to her little boy and just cried, because she never thought that she would see this country, the Rainbow Coalition, the light up on the hill, come to that she was still African American, be elected as president, and hopefully in my lifetime that we will see a woman being elected as president of this country. There's been other countries that are third world countries that is not the beacon have had women prime ministers, but this country has not. diversity is the key, but love is the unifier that brings us all together. That's got to be the catalyst. That's got to be the focus, and that's got to be what drives us and pulls us together. The seat at the table, buddy, thank you for sharing that. The table is large now. It is huge. There's a lot of feet under the table, and we got to embrace those feet, and we got to understand those feet and appreciate those feet. Yes, there will be differences. That's what gives us the strength that we are, because of our differences, but yet we have a common cause, and we can rally together behind that common cause. And we have watched this country do that so significantly. Anytime that someone would even strike at my enemy, that enemy eventually will become my friend, because love draws the enemy in, and that's the catalyst right there. So thank you. That was very great.
I appreciate your comments, gentlemen.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not done. I just took a break because I wanted Professor Willie to do what he does best, and that's flow. And with that being said, when an enemy turns into a friend, then that friend then turns into a brother. And that's from a book Professor Willie gave me to go read. And Professor Willie is always keeping me at the edge of my seat with information, with resources, and I just currently went through that book again this week, The Greatest Salesman by Oz Mendino, and that's a great book. And he talks about love, and he talks about love in many aspects. But I never saw him talk about, read the part about love that you spoke about tonight, and that's coming to the table. And in the military, I know everybody listens is not military, and that's okay. But I know you gentlemen are, so just, we're going to rub it a little bit and talk about military. In the military, what we used to do, we said this thing, work hard, play hard. Well, that meant we had potlucks almost every chance we had. And so you had people from different cultures bringing their favorite dishes. And you could taste the love in each meal that everyone brought to that table. And it's that diversity. It's in that diversity that we have, like Buddy so eloquently said, that strength that we need. We need that diversity to help build different practices, to help us as a nation, as a whole, as it relates to ethics. Because if we have diversity, then we can have integrity, and we can have fairness, and then we can be stable, we can have stability, which will lead to moral character. And so with that being said, Professor Willie, I think this is a difficult question I'm about to ask you, sir. But I know that you're armed and dangerous, okay? So I'm not at all worried about your response, because I know it's going to be edifying. It's going to help build people up with knowledge and wisdom. So that being said, Professor Willie, how can we get the young people to care more about these issues, these social issues?
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership Talk Show podcast, hosted by ID3 and Professor Jeff Willie.
How can we get the young people to care more about these social issues?
I am armed, but I'm not dangerous, do I say? I'm full of love. But thank you, brother. I know what you meant. The key to all of this, and it's pretty simple, but yet it's not always implemented and executed, and that's home. At home. That's got to be the catalyst right there. And then the extension of the home out of the front door is the community, is the neighborhood. Out of that neighborhood, you're going to walk into a school or church. That's got to be the essence of the community, that school, that church, and at home. Home first, the church, and the school. And that has to be on one accord. Has to be yoked together about a unified message of community and love. If I getting my message from the church If I don't understand it as a father, then hopefully through Scripture and through the church and through the school, it's going to continue to edify that and build that up. I have to find a way to bridge all those divides, and that is I must have a mindset as a father, as a mother, as a guardian of my home. I have to have a mindset of civic responsibility. My home is just part of the community, it's part of the big picture. My church is part of the big picture. My school is part of the big picture. But those are the main formative years that impact us the most. Right there is the home, the church, and the school. And everything else is an offset of that. The community, the grocery store, the gas station, the barber shop is all an offset of that. But those three primary institutions are the community. Our thoughts, our focus, our education, our spirituality, our relationship, everything's got to be surrendered around. The key component is love and civic responsibility. Civic responsibility, and that's how the young person will learn that. That young person or the young people, we can't get young people to learn anything unless they see it in action. They have to see it in action through an adult that's modeling that. There's a word that we use, I had grown up, we use, and you hear some other teachers say it, and some other folks say it, and they may use this analogy. When I was growing up, I was on drugs. What do we mean by that? My mother drugged me to church. My father drugged me here. My father drugged me down to the local food bank. My father drugged me to the Salvation Army. My father drugged me to where the homeless shelters were. That's how I was on drugs. Why? Because that adult in my life was taking me to those places and modeling those civic responsibility. And I know when we use the word drug, we're thinking of some type of narcotic, but when I'm using the word drug, that's an opposite of drag. That's the action. Take me by the hand. Let's go, son. Let's go, daughter. I walk beside you. I want you to come along beside me as a partner in being responsible. And my language, communicating with those folks in the community, communicate with those folks in the church, communicate with those folks in the school. It has to be that unified partnership. That encouragement comes out of that, not by the words, but it comes out by modeling of the deeds and the action. So love, as we spoke to eloquently before, love is an action verb. It's not just a verb, it's an action verb. And it has to be moved. It has to be walked out. It has to be carried out. That's how young people get engaged. That's how I have to be the catalyst. I am the guardian and the trainer of my daughter's mind. They see what I do. There's a word that I use quite a bit. I do what I see. I don't do what you say. I do what I see you do.
Professor Willie, if I could add just one thing to that.
Please.
When I'm doing my parenting classes and when I'm working with parents, I tell them that they are not over their children, and that being over their children is a disclaimer and it's a detraction. It doesn't allow respect and love to creep into the equation. What they need to be is a facilitator and a pilgrim. If they're not willing to take the pilgrimage with their children, they're never going to be successful parents. That's how I approach it.
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership Talk Show podcast, hosted by ID3 and Professor Jeff Willie.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Both good. As you both were talking, I was thinking about, not to go too deep, but it has to start in the crib. What you model before a child in the crib helps that child be able to grab on to whatever you're doing, because they're learning, they're grabbing everything. It's like food. because we talked about the table, it's like food. So they begin to digest from the crib in that environment. So that means, how does that look? That means, okay, let me take my kid out of this baby crib and go to a college or go to a library at this state and give them that environment, and then put them back in this crib. And then once they begin to get out the crib, let me then go and take them to maybe a college and let them walk around with me and just breathe in the air, breathe in the environment, and then take them back home. Maybe do it once a month, or twice a year, but give them that exposure, right? Give them that exposure, and then, or even take them to another country, and give them a trip to Canada, take them to Canada, take them, if you can't, take them to an island, Hawaii, or if you can, save up the money and go overseas to Europe and let them breathe in this environment. And you're exposing them to things that they would not see in this pond, right? And so it's a theoretical word for that. I don't want to go that deep into that. But that is so tangible, what you gentlemen have just said. It's so edible. You can eat, you can chew that and not choke, because you broke it down. And so this is what we want to start doing with our audience. We want to start breaking down information so it's helpful, not useless information. So with that being said, Dr. Thornton, do we need to make a call to action? I don't know how to unravel this question I'm about to ask you, but I know the answer is yes. But do we need a call to action to remind us the intrinsic value and their significance in helping our nation as it relates to civic engagement?
Part of being an impactful educational leader is understanding the scope of where the base of the ladder sits. A call to action is really giving people access to the bottom rung of that ladder. And in this case, when you're talking about civic responsibility, civic calls to do your duties, civic virtues, as you've stated, it all starts with creating an impulse of feeding that curiosity, getting people to understand that they are only living one perspective and that they need to explore as many possible perspectives as possible, so that when they get to the bottom rung of that social civic responsibility ladder, they can start climbing it with a base of knowledge. It starts with having dyadic dialogues with any person you run into, whether they're like you, unlike you, whether they're white, black, red, yellow, it doesn't matter. Whether they're American, whether they're European, you have dyadic relationship conversations to build a broader scope of understanding what the world has. And then you have to listen. You have to open up your mind, and you have to listen actively to the different ideas that have come across and come in, and you have to take them in, and you have to kind of meld them around. And then when you're done melding them around, you say, okay, well, you know what, this one works. This one doesn't work quite so well, but this one works. And I want to think about how can I incorporate that into my thinking. And then you debate that amongst your peers and the people in your community, and you say, you know what, we do it this way, but you know what, there's other ways to do this. Why don't we consider them? And then you start to advocate. You start to get your feet. You're on that third or fourth rung of the ladder, and you're getting your feet into that civic mindedness, and you're out there and you're advocating for different ideas, and you're advocating for different people who can stand up and absorb what you're trying to say, and maybe you become a civic leader, maybe you just become a good participant. But then you take the next step. After you get that debate going, you start participating actively, then you insist on participating in our republic, in our voting, in our electing of the people who are going to be the voice. That you speak on the local level, and you see someone who absorbs those ideas and who is willing to be curious like you are, and then you say, I may not agree with all your ideas, I may not agree with most of them, but I know you have an open mind, and I want to put you in a place where that open mind can benefit all of us. So to me, civic responsibility is being willing to have enough curiosity about what may better our society and not be so single-mindedly focused on, no, I think it should be our way. I don't like your way, because that's what's created the divisive world we're in right now, and we know there's a much better way.
He added, he filled in the blanks. He filled in the blanks, and he
Really?
If you don't, you need to know what the blanks are. Just listen to this again. Buddy just filled in the blanks.
I love that.
The fact is, we have diversity in opinion, and the curiosity is, it doesn't matter that I agree with you or not, but we have the same mission, same goal, growth-minded, and I'm willing to advocate for you because I know you're going to be advocating for the betterment of this community, even though I might disagree with some of the things that you are thinking, but your advocation and your love and your heart is going the same direction. I like what Buddy said about this ladder. When you incite my curiosity at that first level, you encouraging me, you ignited the fuel in me to get to the next level, to the next level, to the next level, the level of curiosity. That's what keeps the fire burning. You know, you've heard that cliche about curiosity killed the cat. Well, that's not true. Curiosity is what keeps us alive and keeps us growing and keeps adding more value to this community and making it better.
I believe that the key to our successful future is to teach concepts of openness and transparency to our youth, and we need to do it in every environment that we can find them in.
Openness and transparency and being authentic in front of our children and being sincere and admitting I made a mistake, son or daughter. These are my lessons learned from this mistake. Being authentic, being sincere, and being transparent. And every opportunity that we can encourage, act it out, and walk it out, it's significantly important that our children see us model civic responsibility.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was another night of the Impact of Educational Leadership. This was episode 11. We thank you for listening and tuning in. Take care. Good night.
Welcome to the Impact of Educational Leadership Talk Show podcast, hosted by ID3 and Professor Jeff Willie. This show is designed to provide an exclusive forum on educational achievement gaps related to learner success while discovering relationships and family issues in diverse settings.